MLB.com columnist Richard Justice here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Richard?
Hello, Rich.
Now, I was saying before, if Boss Steinbrenner was alive and saw his highest paid player hurt himself during the middle of a six-game losing streak, during which he also attended the Met Ball, he'd fire everybody. He would go crazy right now.
Yeah, everybody would be. I agree with you. Everybody would be on notice. It's a tough deal. You know, Rich, I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to get back to a more traditional player development approach. And the way Hal Steinbrenner said it is, when I don't think I should have to have a $200 million payroll to win the World Series. Look around us. Last 10 champions have had a payroll rank of 7th. Top 5 payroll only 3 times. But the thing is, there's no margin for error in New York, and when your player development system has a blip and when you rely on old guys, there's going to be a problem. It was amazing to see their discipline last offseason and staying away from David Price and staying away from all those guys, but they're paying the price now, and you always knew that if older guys, if Beltran, if Teixeira, if those guys don't produce, they're in big trouble.
So what happens here? Is somebody's job in danger at all in the Bronx?
I think Hal Steinbrenner takes a very analytical approach, and I think Brian Cashman, the general manager, has a great track record.
He does.
Obviously not Joe Girardi's fault, but what can you do at this point? You know, they do have players in the minor leagues, but are these guys ready to come up and be stars? And that's what they need. They need somebody to ignite something. They're not there. And even the free agent class after this year, I mean, who's there? It's Steven Strasburg. It was going to be Adrian Beltre. He signed. Martin Prado, that's not going to turn the franchise around. It's a tough time, and what you have to do, I think, larger, is hope that Teixeira and Beltran and Jacoby Ellsbury, who's 4 years and $90 million left on his contract, guys you invested in, you have to see if it turns around soon.
I just find it funny, and I plead guilty of being a fan, because, again, you know, fan is short for fanatic, that I hated Steinbrenner for all those years when he was telling Mattingly to cut his hair, and he was trading for the Steve Kemps of the world, you know. And I couldn't have been more happy when he went away and let Stick Michael just grow the system, and then look what happened. Now I wish he was around right now. That's what the Yankees need right now. It's a little bit of a shakeup in some ways.
Right. You don't want people to be comfortable. But the thing is, I think they have such good pros in their clubhouse, in Beltran and Teixeira and Sabathia. I think those guys are embarrassed about the way they're playing. Mm-hmm. I think they're doing the right things. But there is a point where your body just won't let you do the things you've done before. And what is supposed to happen, what happens with the Cardinals, what happens with the best organizations is you have people ready to step in there and play. Look at the San Francisco Giants. That's a homegrown infield. They went out and drafted and signed all of those guys, and they were patient with them. The Kansas City Royals won last year because they were 5 years of paying a price, of being patient and waiting for those guys, young guys, to fail and succeed and fail. And came around. You ask any baseball player, what's the most impressive thing the Royals did? Most impressive thing they did was hire a GM in 2006 and stick to the plan, and that's tough to do in tough times.
Richard Justice of MLB.com joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And the team that bounced the Yankees in last year's playoffs, everybody thought, okay, Astros arrived a little bit early last year, but they have arrived, and now they're almost as disappointing as the Yankees right now, sitting at 9-18. You could say they're even more disappointing than the Yankees because of that youth movement. What's wrong with the Astros, Richard?
Yeah, I think they're more disappointing because they had youth and they had guys that were considered on an upswing. A lot of things are wrong, but the basic thing is the starting pitching you counted on, the guys, Scott Bellman, Mike Fiers, Doug Fister at the end of the rotation. They haven't been very good. They have 2 guys at the front of the rotation. Dallas Keuchel won the Cy Young Award last year. Colin McHugh, they haven't been very good. I think they think those guys will be okay. They have a young guy named Lance McCullers who really transformed the rotation last year. He's supposed to be back off the disabled list in a couple of weeks. What they have going for them is they feel like their core players, the young guys that are so exciting to watch, Carlos Correa, George Springer, they'll be okay. And they do have some answers in the minor league system. It's been a perfect storm. They've been terrible in every way you can measure. Running the bases, bullpen, starting pitching, everything's been bad. And I think it's one of those things where you look at it and go, wait, we're not this bad. So far, they have been.
On the flip side, we expected the Cubs to be good, and you know what? 19-6, pretty damn good. On the South side, though, Richard, okay, this was supposed to be a disaster in the making. based on what we saw in spring training with the Adam LaRoche situation with his son, that were tearing at the fabric of that locker room, that clubhouse. And look at them now, 19-8. This is truly the surprise so far of the first month of the season.
Right. And you and I have seen it 100 times. When you're good, you get things you never expected. They go out and get Matt Latos, released by the Dodgers, released by the Angels last year for $3 million. He's been as good as any starting pitcher in baseball. And the way you turn the page on a bad spring is you have arguably one of the 5 best starting pitchers in baseball, in Chris Sale, Jose Quintana, Latos, and you win every night. Your pitching is great, and that creates this. What's team chemistry? Team chemistry is you win some games, and then all of a sudden everybody likes each other, and you have something to build on. Their general manager, Rick Hahn, has done a great job the last couple of years bringing in a mixture of youth and experience, and it's working out. And because the pitching is so good, you say, wait a minute. You look at Detroit, you look at Kansas City, you look at Cleveland, go, wait a minute, this may be the real deal. They may be able to hold up through the summer. It could be a fun baseball fall in Chicago.
No, I know that the Nats are 18-8 under Dusty Baker, and Joe Madden is Joe Madden. We understand that. But if this keeps up, Robin Ventura is the lock for manager of the year, based on what that clubhouse was like and what was coming out of it in late March. Wouldn't you say, Richard?
No question about that. And you know the thing about hiring guys like him, Mike Matheny, Brad Ausmus, the old school approach was the guy had managed in the minors. What are we getting? But Robin Ventura was a guy like Mike Matheny, like Brad Ausmus. He had a certain stature in the room in terms of professionalism, being able to communicate with players. There's a decency about him. People like him. And that's the new wave. You looked and said, wait, maybe a guy doesn't have to manage 5 years at Double-A and pay his dues if he knows the game and if he knows people, and that's the important thing. And you surround him. He's got a great pitching coach in Don Cooper. They have lots of things going for them. It's cool to see because it's been a tough couple of years for Robin.
T.J. Quinn of the worldwide leader in sports reporting today that more PED suspensions coming from Major League Baseball. This is in the wake of somebody like D. Gordon, who's 180 pounds soaking wet, getting popped for 80 games. What did you make of that suspension and the issue that Major League Baseball has on its hands here, Richard?
Well, I think there's always going to be positive tests because, and they've said this from the beginning when steroid testing began in 2003, you're always going to have a player that gets convinced. Now, there is a way you can make a mistake, but you're going to have players convinced there's a perfect masking agent, there's an undetectable substance, all of that, in the cat and mouse game that is drug testing. But listen, these players that say, look, I didn't know what I was doing, no excuse. Dustin Pedroia showed me his iPhone a year ago, or it has you can scan a barcode, you can call a phone number, you can scroll through the list and take a snapshot of it. The Players Association and Major League Baseball have done everything they can to tell the players, do not take a chance on this. But there are going to be guys that are looking for a shortcut. When you have competitive people, it's going to happen sometimes. But I guess you would look at it and say the testing system is working, and guys are going to have to understand, hey, all that's on the line here is your reputation. And if that's worth what you think you can get out of it, go ahead, but it's a big risk.
So if I gave Yankee fans a choice, I'm just putting myself in this mix too, Richard, head for the George Washington Bridge or sit tight, be patient, it'll all work out. What would you say, Richard? Give me a choice.
You have no choice. Don't hit for the GW Bridge. The traffic's terrible.
Well, it's like if I'm Phil Rizzuto, I'm out by the 7th inning anyway.
Yeah, right. I'll leave it to Bill White. That's right. No, you just say, hey, Jacoby Ellsbury cannot. I just refuse to believe that he's done as a player, that Brian McCann's done. And look, Luis Severino was so good last year. Is he? There's adjustments to be made. I know I'm a lone wolf on this, but I still believe in them. I believe what they got going, and I'm biased because I love the guys in the room, the kind of people they brought into that organization. But you're right, it's been terrible. Okay, well, I'll have you back on in June, Richard, and I'll either talk to you from here in this seat or right in between New York and New Jersey, ready to jump into the Hudson, okay? All right, thank you, Rich. You bet, thanks. That's Richard Justice of MLB.com.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.